Hi, I'm Hannah,
And I'm Brianna.
and we're here to tell you what's in your food. First, we want to tell you the difference between matter and energy.
Matter is defined as anything that takes up space and has mass.
While energy has no mass and takes up no space.
What is food made of? Food is made of carbohydrates, lipids, and proteins.
Carbohydrates are composed of simple sugars like glucose.
All carbohydrates are made of three elements: carbon, hydrogen, and oxygen.
Lipids, or fats, are made up of glycerol and fatty acid tails.
Lipids are composed of carbon, hydrogen, and very little oxygen.
Proteins are made up of amino acids.
All proteins are comprised of the elements carbon, hydrogen, oxygen, and nitrogen.
There are about 20 amino acids in protein.
To test for proteins, you will add biuret, and if it was positive, it will turn purple.
To test for starch in a food, you want to use iodine. If there is starch in the food, the solution will turn black, like cornstarch does in this lab. Cornstarch is the middle one in the front.
To test for lipids, you will use Sudan 3, and if it was positive, it will turn red.
Testing for simple sugars is a little bit harder. You use Benedict solution, and you have to place your beakers in boiling water. If the food item does contain simple sugars, it'll turn yellow, orange, or red.
How do the molecules travel through my body? First, there's digestion, the breakdown of foods into smaller components that can easily be absorbed.
Then there's circulation, the movement of blood through the heart and blood vessels.
Then there's growth and storage, the development and storing of nutrients.
In Cheez-Its, there are 16 grams of carbohydrates, 7 grams of fat, and 3 grams of protein.
The proteins ingested from the Cheez-Its could be used for many things in the body, including actin to help with the muscle development, or in the cell membrane to help transportation of things within the cell.
The carbohydrates will help make energy, and fat will be stored.
Digestion of carbohydrates starts in the mouth with amylase, which breaks starch down into glucose.
The alimentary canal is what everything travels through, and it's from your esophagus to your anus.
The continuation of breakdown, it continues in the small intestine.
The liver takes the glucose molecules and turns them into glycogen so they can be stored.
That ends up in the typical cells. Digestion of lipids starts in the small intestine, where they are broken down by bile.
The first chemical breakdown into fatty acids and glycerol is done by pancreatic lipase enzymes, which also happens in the small intestine.
The liver oxidizes fatty acids, and that ends up in the fat cells and typical cells. Digestion of proteins begins in the stomach, where pepsin begins the chemical breakdown of proteins into amino acids.
Hydrochloric acid makes the acidic environment, so pepsin can do its job.
Small intestines continue breakdown with protease enzymes from the pancreas, which ends up in the typical cells.
Enzymes. An enzyme is a special protein that acts as a catalyst in the breakdown of food molecules, rebuilding molecules, etc.
Most things have specific enzymes, which are usually named after the molecules they help. For example, lactase is for lactose, and protease is for proteins.
Dehydration synthesis is when water is produced through chemical bonding.
When glucose molecules, for example, bond, one molecule must get rid of an H atom, and the other molecule must get rid of an OH molecule in order to be able to bond.
When you want to bond two glucose molecules, one has an extra hydrogen atom and the other has an extra OH molecule. And then you get two glucose molecules bonded, or starch, and a water molecule.
Hydrolysis is a reaction involving the breaking of a chemical bond using water.
If you want to break that up, if you want to break up your starch into two glucose molecules, then you, with the help of the enzyme, add an H and an OH. So each has their own.
Then you get two separate glucose molecules.
Yay!
Endothermic and exothermic reactions. An endothermic reaction is when a reaction requires an input of heat energy.
An exothermic reaction is when heat energy is produced.
Marshmallows. Burning a marshmallow, like we did in Activity 9.5, is an example of an endothermic reaction.
The marshmallow needed the heat from the fire to act as a catalyst to break the glucose down.
Much like enzymes.